This is the Weekly Slice, bite-sized pieces of facts, data, and property info, one slice at a time. Welcome back to another episode of Pizza and Property. I'm your host, Todd Sloan, and today we're going to be talking about, well, kind of about missing out on offers, but really about dealing with agents. And I understand the irony of saying this as an agent, but as a buyer and investor myself, I've been on both sides of the fence with this one. But the thing that I keep hearing that's frustration from the market is, how do you know when you're actually being lied to? Whilst there's no 100% cure-all to this, there are definitely tips and tricks and things that people that have been doing this for decades can certainly give in way of pointing the ship in the right direction. Like, how do you know if you're negotiating with yourself? You're already the top offer. It's pretty obvious if you're in an auction, but what if you're behind closed doors, private treaty situation? Is body language actually really important? Should you be putting these phone calls off, or are you wasting time by actually putting more of this time aside to then do it in person when you can really just do it over the phone if you know what to look for? So today we're going to be talking with Mr. Scott Aggett. He's a regular on the show. He's a sponsor of the show. If you guys haven't seen him before, check him out. But before you go anywhere else, we're going to have a chat with Mr. Scott Aggett right now. Actually, not right now. First, we're going to have a message from our sponsor, and then we're going to get straight into the chat with Mr. Scott Aggett. Liar, liar, pants on fire. I wish I came up with that name, but he did. I wanted to call it Look Who's Lying Now. Anyway, back to the episode.
Looking to buy or sell property the smarter way? Talk to Australia's leading negotiation service, Hello House. Save money, time and stress with expert property price negotiation for buyers and best fit agent selection for sellers. You get more money in your pocket, frank advice, and the outcome you want. Find us at hellohouse.co.
Scott Aggett, back again, mate. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, good. I feel like this is probably going to be one of the last times we see that lovely turquoise color behind you. You've just sold this place.
Yeah, I have. But I actually did a lease back deal until September 15 next year. So you might get a little bit more out of me in this spot. But I could change locations and make it a bit sexier if you wanted to within the house when we play a game of Guess Where I Am today.
Me next episode. I like the idea. I'm normally the one
I'll wear a red and white striped shirt for you as well.
Oh, awesome. Well, now you've had some recent dealings with agents with yourself personally. You have dealings with agents all the time, and you used to be an agent. So, and right now you're talking to an agent. So I wanted to really pick your brains on a little bit of what I think most people are struggling with and getting really frustrated with in the Australian property market in 2021, which is, how do you know when someone's talking BS? How do you know when it's actually like, okay, this is really what's happening? So the first question, first cab off the rank is, if you're negotiating with an agent and you really feel that you're actually being lied to, what are some techniques the everyday investor can actually put in place to try and cut through that?
Oh, yeah, good. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Hey, this is what we have to deal with all the time as a consumer in Australia, dealing with a lot of estate agents, unfortunately. Look, I think there's a couple of easy things that you can do. And I keep falling back on the fact that you need to ask lots of great qualifying questions. And that's always going to put you in good stead to understand the rules of engagement in the deal that you're doing, whether it's, expressions of interest, or you're trying to buy something prior to auction, or it's through sealed bids. So if you know what the game is going to be and how the agent should play that game, then you're going to be in a better position to know what's going to come next. And that's going to prepare you. And then I think if you feel like you've lost trust with the agent, or you're not comfortable, then you've just got to call them out on it. So I think it's really important that you put your hand up and say to the agent, look, I am not comfortable with what you just said. Like, you're trying to put me under too much pressure to act, and really try to break it down. Like, what's happening? Is there another offer is it going to be sold tonight? Why do I need to move so fast? What is the other offer? What's the highest offer you've rejected? You can ask a series of questions like that. If you're going to ask those questions, though, ask and then pause and wait and see if you get a proper response. So I always kind of like throw it out there and then shut up and let them decide how they're going to answer that. And sometimes in doing that, agents will, they'll try and backtrack, right? If they're trying to cover their tracks. And sometimes you feel like, oh, hang on, this doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't pass the pub test or the sniff test. And you just feel like there's something fishy. And that may be a good warning sign for you that this isn't the right deal for you, or you need to ask more questions or put onus back on the agent to explain themselves more clearly. So I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think falling back on asking, the structure of how they're going to sell the property each time, and then asking a lot of questions so you know in order of what's going to happen, and then not being scared to pull it back and ask the agent the hard questions to get the answers you need.
So is it the same then if you're in like an expressions of interest or a best offer buy? Like, I know as an agent right now, I'm running heaps of best offer buys just because pricing is tricky. because it just keeps going up. But if you
Well,
already feel that you're at the top, is what kind of questions do you want to then be asking instead of just negotiating against yourself? Let's say you're already at $1 million and everyone else is at 950 and the agent's still pushing you to go to 105, or do you know what I mean? What kind of questions do you want to be asking?
Well, I'd like to know, I often ask the agents what will buy the property. If they don't tell you and it's just a vague sealed bids, then once you've made the offer, ask the agent, is there a certain level that's going to trigger the sale for the client? So if they hit that level, are they selling? So in other words, if you have to make a best and final offer, does that mean that any of those offers are then going to trigger the sale, or are they going to go back then and start the process of negotiating with agents, with different buyers? Because that's the problem, Todd, what you've just said then as well. That's happened to us quite a lot, that you'll put an offer on the table, or a buyer will have done this before they've got to me. I put an offer on the table, then the agents come back to me and said, well, let's keep negotiating. You haven't got to a level that we were happy, but you asked for my best and final offer. So clearly, if you're coming back to me, then I'm the highest bidder. So then I would say to you, why would you bid against yourself in that situation? So I'd want to know exactly where the seller was at, rather than just blindly bid against yourself there. I'd want to know, okay, well, if we've given you our best and final offer, if that's not enough, what buys the property? You've asked me to show my cards. I've shown my cards. Time for you to show your cards. You know what I mean? Like, how are we going to get a deal here together if we all bid our best and final and it's not enough? Yeah, I'd put it back, the onus back on the agent to say, well, what is the vendor going to sell at today, and what are the terms that they want? So I would have asked those questions up front. What's the settlement? What's the deposit size? What conditions? So you know all those things, so you could repackage that up to make the strongest sealed bids offer, or pre-auction offer. But then I want to know, if I make an offer at a certain level, if you're going to ask us all to make a best and final, is that because it's going to trigger a sale? Yeah. And if not, then where's the vendor at? What do I need to do to secure the property? And I'll make the decision if I'm going to spend any more on the property or not. It's not showing the cards that, what's the vendor want? Yes, I'll spend whatever I have to, or I'll keep bidding against myself. I'll make that decision whether or not I see value beyond where I'm at.
But at least you're actually getting the information out of the agent first before you just blindly say a figure.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you see this a lot, I'm sure, with auctions. I watch so many people at public auctions bid against themselves when the property is effectively passed into them as the highest bidder. But under auction conditions, the agent will keep them under a blowtorch. They'll stall the auction. They'll go inside and talk to the vendor. They'll pretend to be doing some negotiations, and they'll come back out and put that lead buyer under intense pressure to bid against themselves. And I see it all the time, every single weekend, that people will bid 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 grand more than they have to. At that point, you've really got to stop and say, okay, you wanted this, Todd. You're the agent. I wanted to buy it prior. Here we are today. You decided this was the method of sale that was best for your client and for you. I'm sitting here with my hand up as the highest bidder. Don't beat me around now to pay more. It's time for you to go inside, or it's time for you to go inside and speak to your vendor and have a hard conversation about where they are versus where market value is, because market value is here with my hand. So I think if you can play hard in that instance, then what often happens is the agent's got to work a little bit harder to try and close the gap. And sometimes you might have to pay an extra 5, 10, 20 grand sometimes to close a deal. I've done that for sure, just to get a deal across the line. But so often people just bid blindly against themselves when they didn't have to.
What I'm really hearing there is know when you've actually given, because then as the buyer, if you've gone give, and they're still asking, then it's like, no, you can actually stand firm confidently going, no, it's time for me to take now. I've done X, Y, Z. I've met you all here. It's time for you to actually go in there and start doing some of this.
Absolutely. I think you need to have an element of control over it, because, you'll see people say often to us that, look, I made an offer on Saturday and I haven't heard back from the agent. That was 6 days ago, or 5 days ago. It's like you had no control over that process whatsoever. So you didn't ask how the agent was going to run the process. You didn't ask if that number was where the vendor was willing to sell at. And you've just got no way of wrapping that deal up. So you've got to ask those questions. You've got to know the time frame. And ideally, you've got to control it, that there's a very small window that you're going to be there for, and you're going to make your best offer, and then you're going to move on. So you've got an element there of, a fear of loss.
Speaking of moving on, I've just looked down at the clock. So I'm putting you under pressure right now to try and answer this one in about 30 seconds.
Go.
Body language. Personally, I think it's a little bit overrated unless you're an absolute body language expert. So much of what I do is over the phone, but they say like 80% of what we say is said through our body language. As someone that negotiates professionally, what's your take on this when it comes to actually spotting someone telling you BS?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I did my whole career as an estate agent, not going to people's houses to negotiate with them face to face. So we're used to doing it on the phone. I think it's overrated, that body language part of it. I've built my business Hello House nationally, negotiating on the phone and over SMS and things with people. If you ask the right questions and you're very direct, I get some pretty weak responses from people. And that's when I know that there's, an avenue for me to drive further and to take advantage of that. So I think it's about knowing the right questions to ask, knowing when to pause and wait for a response. and, and waiting for those BS answers to be thrown at you, and when they've come, and that makes me decide, okay, they've done that for a reason, and that reason is there's no other buyer. They've tried to create competition or what it might be. So it's about learning how these things play out when they use the lines.
Instead of looking at them if their arms are folded or that kind of
Correct.
thing. Yeah,
correct.
Gotcha. All right, awesome. Well, Scott Aggett from Hello House, thank you once again for joining us. I'm sure it won't be the last time, mate. We'll see you on the show again soon.
Thanks, Todd. See you later.
I like that one, the look for backtracking. I think that's a super good one. When you actually strip down a lot of what we do, like as agents, it comes down to emotional manipulation. Now, there's different lines of where you can actually do that, because when you say the words emotional manipulation, you sound like a muppet, right? But you have to remember, an agent works for the vendor and wants to get the best price they actually can for a vendor, naturally. And there's ways of using that in a way that everyone still gets what they want, but naturally you shuffle the deck in your vendor's favor as the agent. But there's also tricks on how that can all be shuffled, like Scott's saying right now. And I love that about look for inconsistencies, like look for backtracking, look for things that just don't quite make sense, but don't be afraid to press on them, especially if you've been giving. And it's like, hold on a second, it's time to take now. Actually, I think I've done enough on here, and don't be afraid to stand up for it in the negotiation, not necessarily in like an asshole kind of pushing way. You don't ever want to be that guy or girl, but in a way that is showing you're not going to be walked over. And that way, if you are being lied to, it's also showing that you're not going to put up with it the same way. It's a really delicate kind of balancing act that you really want to master. You can't be bothered mastering it, just give Scott a call. That could also work. And if you listen to episodes like this and you can't be bothered, well, that's one of the whole reasons we've got these guys on as sponsors as well. They are bloody brilliant at what they do. Like, head on over to Hello House if you want to do more of the legwork yourself and get Scott to take care of the negotiations. Go to Hello House, check him out online. All of his links are in the show notes on this episode. Or if you want someone to do the entire thing for you, well, then go on over to investorkit.com.au. Chat with Arjun. These guys are brilliant at what they do. But if you want to actually do this yourself and you want to go, no, I'm the one that's going to actually put in the work, I'm going to save all this money, I'm going to negotiate the deals, keep listening to this kind of stuff, because this is gold. I wish I had this when I very first started investing. We had little bits and pieces of it, but now it's just like information in droves, which is a fantastic thing if you utilize it. But otherwise, guys, like, I will see you next week. Well, actually, I'll see you on Sunday, but my name is Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast. Have yourself an amazing rest of the week and stay awesome.